If that hasn't gotten people to wake up yet, what will? Wake up and realize these people don't care about you. The Libertarian Party is the only party that actually cares about your rights to liberty and freedom. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Liberty Inc. podcast, your source to everything liberty in NC. And tonight we've got a special episode. Quite frankly, he's a legend in the Libertarian Party from 2008 to 2012. He had more libertarian votes than anybody in history until Gary Johnson, did that in 2012 in the presidential election. I could go on and on about his accolades, but I really want to tell you why I wanted to bring him on the show and reach out to everybody in North Carolina. So I met John at the LPNC convention here in 2021, and he gave a speech that my wife, who's not a libertarian, she's unaffiliated, doesn't really care about politics, and she went over to me after John's speech, and she was moved by it. Obviously, I was, since I wanted to bring him on the podcast. But to me, that said, boy, these ideas are really resonating, not just with libertarians, but with regular people, right? Even politically disassociated people. And it was on a particular topic that I thought was really quite interesting, and I wanted to learn more about, which was something similar to what you're seeing up in New Hampshire of the Free State Project and really taking that local. So welcome to the show, John. Thanks so much for making some time to chat with me, and welcome to the show. Yeah.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on here with you, and I look forward to the conversation we're going to have. I really had a great time at the North Carolina LP convention, and I hope there's something that I might be able to share that folks will enjoy. So let's get at it.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to sum it up briefly there and kind of introducing you. But when you started talking about that, I talked to my wife about the Free State Project when I found out about it. But I'm just going to be honest, she's a North Carolina girl, born here. Her family's been here since the 1700s. She loves North Carolina, so following her crazy libertarian husband to New Hampshire for this idea of freedom just wasn't really realistic. But you started talking about something you're doing in Georgia that made me think, wow, that's amazing. Would you just tell our listeners a little bit about that? I know you could go through the whole speech, but I want to dig into the details, the stuff that, that the activists would want to know. About how we can maybe replicate something here. So yeah, just tell us about it.
Well, to give a little background, I was also really enjoyed, hearing about the Free State Project, but I do not want to live in New Hampshire. So it was a no-go for me. But it inspired me to think about taking that concept and doing it maybe on another level where people would not have to move, but enjoy some of the successes that that project I believe in those ideas would resonate with. So with that being said, great idea. And what were they trying to accomplish? They're trying to accomplish a gathering of freedom-minded people in a location in which they could have an impact on politics, getting freedom-minded people elected to office, and really making this freedom thing work. So the ideal of the concept is awesome. So how can we do that on a local level? Because I love Georgia, even though I was born in Michigan. I've been down here in Georgia for probably half of my life, 20 years. 21 years now since moving back after being out of leaving here for school and moving back home to Michigan.
I love Georgia. That's my wife's one of my wife's favorite places for us to go for weekend vacations is Savannah, Georgia. And Georgia's beautiful, so I understand why you'd want to stay in Georgia.
So and I think other folks like me are looking for something different. We're looking for success. The LP has been around for over 50 years, and we've had successes. But in that 50 years, of course, we're not where we want to be. We talk about setting the world free in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But how long do we have? No days promised. I don't know if I have another 50 years,
Right.
to wait on freedom.
Sure.
So I think what we're going to talk about tonight, the Free County Project, is a way to speed up the process, because I think there's lots of folks are out there looking. They're tired of these other parties and what they've done, but they really don't know if there's an alternative.
Yeah.
But this could be an idea that will tip them. Will be a tipping point to have a lot of folks come over to the LP way, and because I think what a lot of people are looking for is not theory. We talk about what it may look like, if we get elected, but we want to show them what it would be like in practice.
Yep.
And getting libertarians elected and governing. And I think with that example, we'd be able to turn this country around.
I think, and I call them the Uniparty. I know Spike Cohen calls them Republicrats. I think they're scared of that, right? That's the one thing they kind of have in their back pocket is, well, you have no real world examples of libertarianism providing the outcomes for everyone that you claim it will, right? And well, yeah, my dad's a big baseball fan. He's in his 80s, and I'd tell him, because he argues and says the same thing, and I said, but Dad, if you never get an at bat, your average is always going to be 0. The libertarians haven't gotten our at bat yet because we've never had the opportunity, even at the county level, to show, hey, we can follow these principles that have been guiding libertarians for 50 years, apply them, at a county level. And now other counties, you pull this off in Georgia, and now North Carolina, South Carolina, every state can look at it and be like, wow, we need to get our liberty-minded people in this state together. And if Republicans or Democrats are not running our state the way we want, maybe we can get that down to the local level, because that's the thing that really impacts most people's life on a day-to-day basis. Yes, the warmongering and everything the president and the federal government does impacts us, but not on the level of, your town council who wants to put something in, wants to put something or reserve some land for some community project where potentially, the free market may have a better solution, right? If the community wants something there, free markets can solve that. And if you pull that out of your community, I think that's what gets people excited. Is it's the zoning laws that impact your life that would make a tangible change. Where really, at this point, $29 trillion in debt. What's the spending matter? Almost at this point, it's so out of whack. It's like, well, something's going to happen, but can't do anything about it. But maybe if we can get local government to stop making us spend tax dollars on putting nonviolent drug offenders through the justice system, right? And knowing that's something that people really care about, I think. So I got to thinking, right? You gave the speech and I hit you up there. And obviously this is really the first time we've connected to record this podcast because you're so busy. And I've kind of had things bouncing through my mind. Just the way I work is I have this kind of the tidbits of the idea, and then I start going, well, how would we do this, this, and this? So one thing that I think about is, when I think of that county level, there's a few key positions that I would think if there was a group of libertarians who wanted to try this, and you've talked about, I believe you said, look, we want a totality of that local government, right? A super majority where we can get that done. But I was thinking, kind of the approach of is, how do we step our way into it? Because you said, how many people? I think you said it was around 2,000 in the county that you guys are trying to do this in. Was that
right? And one of the first steps we did is look at some of the smaller counties in Georgia, and then do kind of a comparison, whether you're looking at population, election results, the number of kids in school, when their elections are, their election cycle, and you take and analyze all that. Also, just like you were saying, on most of these county commissions or city councils that are set up, it only takes 2 to 3 votes to get things done. And so if you have a council of 5, you need 3. And with that, you can implement your agenda. And this has never been done yet. But when you look at counties of population, say of 10,000 and below, you look at those, how many are registered? Not everybody's registered to vote. So even in a scenario where you got 8 to 10,000 people, if half of them are below voting age, so you're only looking at 4,000, all the adults aren't necessarily registered to vote. Yeah. So it might be a situation where all the registered voters add up to about 3,000 in a town of 10,000. Or, if it's smaller, if it's 5,000 people, maybe only 1,500 are registered to vote. And then if you look at the election results, typically they're going to be split, either Republican or Democrat. So you might have an election won, say 55% of the vote. So let's say you have 13 to 1,500 people in a locality. Those elections can be won with, say, 600, 700 people. I mean, and that means every election, because most of the time we run into scenarios in some of my elections in which Democrats aren't going to vote Republican. They don't care, and Republicans are the same way. Some of them, a good number of them, would probably never vote Democrat. So when you have it split like that, if we come in with a force of voters that can garner the majority, then we're looking at having a majority on the county commission, having a majority on the city councils, having an elected libertarian sheriff. How does that sound?
I mean, that's what I was thinking is
war on drugs.
Sheriffs and judges, right? Elected judges too. Those are the things that was where my mind went to is, the county's there, but how do we get a libertarian sheriff and libertarian judges who can change the justice system? Because that would be such a huge win. Like to be able to show that, because I look through it and, I tend to be one of the, and that's one of the things on the show that non-libertarians watching it, there's a lot of different thoughts. You've got more radical ideas within libertarianism, more moderate ideas, but we all want the same thing, right? It's those guiding principles of libertarianism that kind of unite all of the little different things there. But I think about that, right? A libertarian sheriff who's going to say, at the end of the day, what's important is there a victim? If there's no victim, whether it's the drug war or, in cases, I see it in Charlotte, right? I'm here in North Carolina. I'm in a little bit west of Charlotte, but there's talk of making it a crime to give money directly to a homeless person. How is that a crime? Who is the victim there? And now you're literally making someone doing a kind gesture a crime. And I would think it would be amazing if you can get a libertarian sheriff who comes in here and just says, yeah, we're not going to enforce all this stupid stuff that there's no victim, we're not going to put, separate families, right? And all of the other things that come along with the justice, the justice system for things that there's no victim. What does it take, and that's one of the things, because I was thinking about that, you've got a targeted county. When is this kind of, what's the timetable on kind of the Free County project here? What's your goals with that?
Well, here in Georgia, in a particular county that we've identified, elections in 2024 are really the goal to have this in place. We have to have a target to shoot for. So it's ongoing. This is new. I brought this idea to the LP Georgia convention, and it got a very good reception. So now what we're doing is networking with folks that like the ideal and spreading the word. And that's whether it's in Georgia, whether it's I had an opportunity to speak at the convention in Alabama, and my thought was, bringing the idea once again, but, for those folks in Alabama, you can do it there, or if you'd like to come help us in Georgia. The thing is spreading the ideal and giving people options.
Yeah.
For example, if anybody in North Carolina, they might not be as tied to North Carolina as a lot of other folks, and they would consider moving to Georgia. Well, if North Carolina isn't maybe doing the project, or it's not really picking up, but you'd like to come somewhere else, we'd be glad to have you in Georgia. But I've talked to folks. I think they have a similar program going in Arizona that's already kicked off.
Okay.
Tennessee, Oregon. I mean, the ideal is popular. It's organic. I think it's something that people are looking for, something that other people have thought of, just like you and I, looking at the Free State Project, saying, man, what can I do where I live to make this happen? And the numbers, the Free State Project, they were looking at 25,000 people. That's pretty daunting. I think they've been at it for a number of years, and they've gotten about 10,000 commitments. And I forget the number of people that have already moved. But with projects like this, whether it's Georgia, Alabama, North Carolina, I've talked to Spike about South Carolina, getting this thing going. You have these small rural communities that 2,000 or 3,000 people or less could make a huge difference in bringing freedom to our lifetimes. So in Georgia, some of our races, we've gotten over 100,000 votes for LP. So we know people out there are willing to do something different than vote for those two other major parties.
You had over 100,000 votes for governor, right?
Yeah, I got about 106,000 votes for governor.
If we could just get 2,000 of them to move to this county with you guys could set the example, and hopefully snowball it the rest of the way.
Exactly, because like you mentioned, I mean, without even talking to you, you're talking about some of the same things that I'm thinking about. The fact that setting an example, people are looking for an example where there's freedom. And my thing would be, let's get one county here, two counties going, and then other people will start looking at what we have and saying, I want that. They'll start pressuring their elected officials to say, why can't we be doing what they're doing? And I don't mind Republicans and Democrats stealing, our ideals, because they do it all the time. Well, let them talk about, lowering taxes, eliminating taxes, open up homeschooling, more private schooling, not voting for, we have a lot of special purpose sales taxes over here. Yeah. Let's not renew those. The state of Georgia, for example, sets a 4% state sales tax. So the local communities are offered opportunities, to increase the sales tax on themselves.
Sure. So
our county where I live last year just voted on another penny increase, and we're up to 8% tax. 50% of that was voted on by locals. I mean, so first of all, if you have elected officials that refuse to put it on the ballot, then many of these taxes would just expire. We could give ourselves a 50% tax cut on sales tax alone. So those are the type of things that elected libertarians would be willing to do.
That's inspiring. So I think through there, like, as far as what it needs, right? You got to have candidates, right? At the end of the day, if someone's trying to replicate this, right? I'd love to move to Georgia and be a part of it. But again, my wife, North Carolina's home. She accepted me. You
have a second residence here. I mean, just change your voting. Because what we find in local elections where I live, now you talk about a wasted vote. That's a wasted vote, because there's not enough libertarians here that are willing to boot these guys out. But if we congregate in an area in which we could vote locally for local elected officials, it's almost like our vote would count twice or three times for the impact that it would have.
Yeah, more than that. That local impact is the most important impact, right? Because that's what really affects your community. What's going on in Washington, it's great to sell news. It's great to feed into, the agenda there. But at the end of the day, you see toxicity online between people, right? I live in a neighborhood. There's Republicans and Democrats. We all get along. You look online and it's, from the outside, you're like, wow, they're just constantly fighting. And I think that that's one of the things too. Libertarians, not too many people even know who we are or what we're about, right? We're 50 years old, party's 50 years old, and I still to this day run in, what's a libertarian? So from a standpoint there, maybe, I still have hope that, the next 10 years can be the catalyst, right? We have means of reaching people that didn't exist 50 years ago, right? Where,
Right.
Now you and I can have a conversation, from a state away or 2 states away, and we can put that out there, and people in North Carolina and Georgia, in China, right? As long as they don't have sense, anywhere in the world can listen to that. And
Right.
I believe our ideas work and resonate. And when you have a conversation with, someone who's far left, far right, you can normally find common grounds as a libertarian, because there's some things ideologically on both sides that we agree with, right? If we're talking to Republicans, we can talk to them about, hey, we're right there with you on lowering taxes. In fact, you like low taxes, we'll probably lower your taxes more than Republicans will lower your taxes, right? And, Democrats are clearly wanting things that libertarians have been calling for forever: ending qualified immunity, criminal justice reform, de-escalating the militarization of police. And if libertarians governed, guess what? We'd give you more of that than Democrats who you elect would. Because those things that matter to voters that both sides campaign on, we agree with a lot of them. And, there's some things we don't. Both Democrats and Republicans tend to be pretty authoritarian and willing to grant power to the government if it fits their side of that left-right divide. We generally say, well, we're going to go for all of these things as long as it's taking power away from government, giving it to you, the people. I think that could be a great solution in having the narrative, right? Where if we get this example, and that's why I'm so optimistic about that, because am I allowed to ask which county is it going to be in Georgia, or
Well, you can, but what I try to do is, for those who are serious, I want them to reach out personally,
okay,
about that, and also keep from people that may not want to see us successful. Yeah. They have to work for it a little bit harder, to disrupt what we're trying to do.
Sure. Oh, I don't want to strategically do that, but off camera, I'd love to know, because I want to follow it. I want to see this happen and be ready to point on election day. Everybody watch this, because you're about to see history be made in this county in Georgia.
Right. At the convention, when I was asked in person at the convention, I definitely told some folks what county we're looking at. But there on Facebook, there's a group, a private group,
okay,
the Free County Project. You can reach out to me, and we'll get you connected into a network of folks that are working on this ideal. We also have an email address for those who want to reach out that way. Georgia, spelled out, fcp@gmail.com is a place they can, if they're really interested, reach out and get some more information. So some of the next steps that we're doing, besides spreading the word and getting folks into this private group and discussing it, is I've actually visited the county several times to look at the lay of the land. Like I say, we looked at population, we looked at where it is in the state. How far is it from major metropolitan areas? Those are the type of things that we looked at. The number of students in the school system. So now it goes into, and this is a voluntary program.
Yeah.
So there's not a formal organization. I just see myself as one of the coordinators to help make this happen. But whether somebody wants to live in an apartment, whether you want to live in a tiny house, whether you want to buy 100 acres of land or live on a lot downtown, this is a project that can fit anybody that's really serious about getting it done.
Wow.
So, and it would be the same in North Carolina, the same types of things that for those who are interested would do in North Carolina. Look at the different counties, identify what looks like a good fit. And you might even have more than one. I had a person here in Georgia that said, that particular county didn't work for them, but they were willing to do the same thing in a county that was more amenable to what they were looking for. So we don't want to pigeonhole this into one area. It can be multiple. It can be across the country. And I think it's something that will work internationally for those who want to be free in their lifetime. So it has a lot of space to grow, a lot of things that can happen.
That's exciting. And when you look at that, and just the way my mind goes to it is, have you thought of kind of any targeted things, right? Where like the first things that you'd like look to do to do that? Any thoughts on those, or kind of what the best ways to target, things to either, remove or change or adjust, or I guess it's going to vary from county to county with what the needs are of the people there. But, just kind of the vision. What's that vision of after we?
I think some of the things that will really set a free county apart from other counties is, you mentioned taxation. An area, definitely something that we as libertarians and freedom seekers would probably do in any area is support things like homeschooling, private schooling. And one thing about most of the county taxes here in Georgia, our taxes locally, 50% of it goes to the school system. So if you find a way to encourage people to start either educating their own kids or join in co-ops to educate kids, establish private schools to educate kids. If you reduce the number of kids in the system, then automatically you can start reducing the amount of property taxes that are used to fund those schools. So if you lower property taxes, and that's something that communities could compete with. I know here in Georgia, North Florida, a lot of these areas they're all doing the same thing. They're taxing everybody. So if you find a free county that's actually lowering taxes voluntarily, that sets you apart, especially with companies, businesses. A lot of times they look for tax incentives to come to your area. Yeah. Well, this is something we wouldn't have to negotiate with. They'd already be in place. It'd be attractive. It makes your property more valuable. So, that's definitely an area. You look at education, you look at taxation.
That's huge to me. I'm a homeschool dad, so I have a business, and it's funny with where my mind goes off of that. But as a dad, I'm paying for the public school system, even though I'm blocking off my calendar for a few days, not talking to clients, to spend time educating my child, because I honestly believe 3 or 4 hours of me hands-on dedicated to educating my child, I'm confident that I can give him a better education. And I pulled him from a private school. I sent him to a private school before that, and I thought, you know what, hey, I'm paying for this and I'm paying for public school. I could do this on my own, and I made that decision before COVID. Then everybody was kind of forced into it there. But when you mention that piece, that I almost see an opportunity for free markets to come in and solve that too, right? Like philanthropic schools, right, where you can have someone who's passionate about that, who wants to support it, right? Maybe someone who has a background in education, who would want to be a part of this project, right? Where they can come in and not only have the government side of it being libertarian, but if you've got that libertarian community where people are like, you know what, we want to set up a local nonprofit school that's going to give a better education to the kids in the community that are here, right? And that allows it to, well, wow, now we have no kids going to public school at all in the county. Right. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. And I'm also a homeschool dad, and my wife and I have homeschooled 3 out of 4 kids to college.
Wow.
So, and we face the same dilemma. One, we're paying, for failing schools. For example, in my county, every school, we have a very small county, about 24,000 people down here, but every school is an F-rated school. And there's really nowhere to go for a lot of people. They don't have options. So the system isn't working. And it's like that across the country. You have some schools that might be doing well, but a lot of these government schools are failing kids, all kids, not just African Americans. They're failing everybody. So this is an opportunity. But once again, a lot of parents say, well, what are my options? They don't see options. Another example, how we could show them an option, show them something that works. Our experience in homeschooling, especially in working with a co-op, is for the early years, it's you don't have to have a college degree to teach the alphabet, to teach numbers and history to our kids. But if for some reason a lot of people say, well, parents shouldn't be teaching their kids because they don't know enough to teach their own kids, that points to a problem in the system right there.
It does.
So how can they go K through 12 through a system and not even be able to educate their kids for, say, K through 6?
Yeah.
That's how bad the system is.
It is, that's something a lot of people don't think of that, and I think here in North Carolina where I am, and I think of my wife's parents, right? And you're dead on, right? My wife is white. I'm Puerto Rican. My wife is as white as they come, but her mother was a mill worker, a textile mill worker. And when we first met, I saw this woman in her 50s in a 120-degree factory spinning for 10 hours, right, with minimal breaks. I went in there just to visit, and it's intensely noisy. And even there, right, she had that opportunity through the public school system, but it failed her. It fails everybody. And for me, when I look at it, generally it fails economic, it generally fails poorer people, right? Generally the unfortunate reality of it is, there is an economic advantage to having that. And the system does disproportionately harm lower income people, unfortunately. But that shows that the system's not working, right? The rich people are the ones that the system doesn't really need to work for, right? They have the opportunities. So if a system is going to work, that's who you should gauge it for. If the idea of government throwing a bunch of money at something could work, you would think this is where we should target throwing all of that money. And in some jurisdictions, I know, some have done that and have thrown a ton of money into the public school system, and it hasn't done anything. And that's where I think free market solutions, homeschooling, co-ops, and nowadays with the internet, there's free homeschool resources nowadays where
absolutely,
if you can get them through 5th grade, right? Maybe teach them to learn. And, if you get into algebra and, you didn't really do well, you don't need to know that, right? You don't need to know that anymore. Maybe, in the 70s you did, right? But today you really don't. You give that foundation and let technology and innovation and the free market solutions that exist solve that. So wow, that's the kind of thing that I'm excited about, right? And I it's interesting to hear how you're kind of organizing, right? Because that's what it's going to take. When I hear this, I'm like, wow, this is an amazing idea. But then I go into I'm a business owner, so I start to think, well, how do you implement it? Ideas are great, but you need to be able to implement them. But that's what it takes, because with 2000, I would think, well, I don't want to go into this but I feel like a few hundred dedicated people is probably what it would take And not immediately, because then they need to grow and they need to interact in their community and win some Republicans and Democrats over to the ideas. Because then, you're one person who's the activist. If they can get 4 or 5 more people, you can scale it. But from ideas, I guess you really just want a diverse background of people who are willing to be politicians, willing to be free market solutions, but all buy into that idea.
I mean, the common value is wanting to be free.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just libertarians that want to be free. There's a lot of Democrats and Republicans that want to be free. They just don't know how to get there. They have this notion that, following those paths would get them there. And through miseducation, that. So another example, just thinking about having a libertarian sheriff. In Georgia, it's a constitutional office, and they are the highest law enforcement officer in the county. In Georgia, the FBI, the CIA, or any other alphabet, type agency cannot do anything in the county without the sheriff's permission.
Really? Is that a Georgia specific, or is that going to vary based on state law? Or I'm just curious.
I'm not sure, but that's something to look for.
Yeah, I'm going to look into that in
North Georgia.
But that's
absolutely, they are the highest law enforcement officer in the county, and you just cannot come in. Federal agents cannot come in without their permission. And I think a libertarian sheriff would be like, nope, not gonna happen.
And do they have the power at that level for like federal law nullification? Because we see that in some states, right? Where you look at California and you look at Colorado, where essentially at the state level they've decided, we're not going to enforce federal marijuana laws, right? We're just not going to do it. And now we see some states thinking about doing the same thing with gun laws, right? There's talk in certain places where they're just going to nullify. Is that something that is possible through a county sheriff, where if we wanted to say, even potentially nullify federal law?
Well, I think they set the agenda for what their office wants to do. And that happens, everywhere. What's the priorities of the department? And in some libertarian sheriff probably like, these drug laws are not our priority. Once again, you talked about having a crime, you have to have a victim. So if people are voluntarily living their lives and not harming other people, to me, that sheriff would say that is not something I'm interested in taking on. But that would be an option. That'd be something, great to see. What are the other options? And I think they're unlimited. Once again, whether it's how you deal on the state level with different programs and things that you say, hey, I don't want to be a part of that. How you deal on things on the federal level. When you have this community come together that believes in freedom, believes in local control, then a lot of these state and federal government statists we tell them to take a walk, take a hike, pound sand. We have things here. We're going to develop our own communities, our own businesses. We're not going to tax them to death. We give people opportunity. And so what does that look like? Like I say, we haven't, I know in my lifetime, I hear this ideal of being free, but I know I haven't lived it. Our communities, this country is not even probably as free as it was 100 years ago, of course, with all the laws and regulations. So, what would that feel like? What would that be? This is an opportunity. What is this an opportunity for everyone? No. But if you really want to be free, you want to taste it, you want to live it, you want to feel it, wherever you live, get involved. Like I say, if you want to stay in North Carolina, do a North Carolina Free County project. Get to working on it.
Yeah.
And use the laws in our favor. Like I say, you can have more than one residence, but you can only vote in one locality. So I live in South Georgia. I love it down here. We've been down here 20 plus years. But once again, my voting here doesn't really matter. So if I have property in our designated county, I would gladly change my voting registration to that county so my vote could have an impact.
Yeah, I mean that's exciting. You know, I would say, you know, if you're a North Carolina listener, you know, and you really want to see this, check out, you know, the page on Facebook. I will not be offended if you're willing to leave North Carolina, because honestly, I would love to be a North Carolinian and be able to point to Georgia and say, hey, North Carolina, let's do this. But, you know, if you're like me and kind of tied to North Carolina for some reason or other, leave a comment wherever you're watching this podcast. We got to start something like this, even if it starts small. You know, John's going to try and get this done in 2024 in Georgia. Maybe we're not until, you know, 2028, and it takes us a little more time to get organized because, you know, I'm a realist. It's going to take time. It's going to take organization. It's going to take people who are passionate about those goals to accomplish it. But it, you know, if I can't be the spearheader of it, because between running a business and being a homeschool dad and everything else, I can't spearhead it. But boy, I would love to join it. And if I can convince my wife to move a few counties over and still be here, I don't know, I got a better chance of that than getting her to leave the state. So John, you know, when I have guests here, you know, I know most of my guests have been North Carolina, but they do give me a little bit of autonomy in talking about kind of national things, and I love the focus at the local level. But I'd love to just get your thoughts. You know, the Libertarian Party, right? It's been 50 years. I'm actually more optimistic about the Libertarian Party today than ever before. Right? You know, and that's why I'm getting involved and why I'm running a podcast for the state. You know, I look at it here and I see a big opportunity. I think it needs to start local, but I look at this and I say, you know, we're $30 trillion in debt. Nobody can point the finger at each other and blame it. You both did it. Like, you're both responsible at this point for all of the mess that we have. And I feel like, you know, if it gets to that point where, you know, the petulant fighting children of the uniparty fight enough that they really break things up and there's a need for solution, I hope that the Libertarian Party is there to be like, hey, we've been telling you the solution for 50 years. Are you ready to hear it now? But where do you see what, you know, as far as the future of the Libertarian Party growing, you know, what can we do? You know, you've been, you know, I didn't talk about it in your intro again because there's so much there, but, you know, for anybody who doesn't know, Joe Jorgensen was our presidential nomination in 2020, but there's a process through ranked voting where it goes all the way through and people are eliminated. Guess John was there almost until the very end. I think you were I
think I was fourth on the presidential nomination, and then Spike and I dueled it out for the VP spot.
Yeah. I mean, so national politics, you've got a lot more there. You know, where do you see us going? What's the opportunity? I think, you know, I think we need to just be reaching out to Republicans and Democrats and bringing them on and saying, look, we're going to work together towards this goal. And there's a lot of things that you'll agree with, whichever side you're on. Maybe not everything, but honestly, I think, I don't know if anybody, I don't even know if Republicans or Democrats all agree with even their own party's platform with all of it, right? Like there's some Republicans who like a lot of it, may not like some, but still give them their vote. You know, I feel like there's going to be a home for that where, you know, after their side has done their part of blowing it up, how do we reach them? How do we grow this party? One of the things I think of as a big goal is that 5%, right? We get the 5%, we get on the debate stage and we start getting consistent there. What does that look like? What can we do, you know, to try to help that national goal as well, you know, kind of shifting from that local to national?
Well, I mean, you break it down state by state, for example. Being in North Carolina at the convention, I think that was probably one of you guys' largest conventions.
It was, yeah, our largest.
Same in Georgia. I mean, I think the outlook for the party is great. I mean, we're doing things that we've never done before. Um, I'll just give Georgia as an example. You have to be in the fight. And look at myself. I may have mentioned this at the convention. I didn't know, never met a libertarian before I joined the party, didn't know what libertarians were, but I was looking.
Yeah.
So we have to be there for people like me. And there's a lot of people looking right now. So we have to do everything that we can. And there's a lot of people putting in a lot of great work. Just keep doing it and do more of it. Fielding great candidates, being right on the issues. We've talked about issues for 50 years, ending the drug war. We've been right on that. Equality, respecting everyone's rights, supporting pride events and everybody that wants to be free. So we have to do that. We're fighting. In Georgia, we have a federal lawsuit right now in which we won. We challenged the election laws that kept third-party candidates off the ballot for U.S. Congress for the House since the 1940s. We actually won that lawsuit on constitutional grounds, and now we're waiting for the court to come back with a remedy. So we're looking at something that's going to reduce the requirement. If we wanted to field a full candidate of U.S. House races for libertarians, we needed over 200,000 plus signatures. Now we're looking at something that will reduce that level either down to maybe 500 per race, or maybe even eliminate it, depending on what the Georgia Assembly does. But we're ready. We're already lining up candidates, because that way we can spread the message on a federal level. We run great statewide candidates. And because of those in the past who were doing the work before I even joined the party, who set us up for ballot access for statewide races. So we've maintained that since the 90s. So we just have to be ready, because people are coming our way. They're looking our way. And with something like the Free County Project, when we actually start governing in these localities, I mean, there's going to be a watershed moment when people are just going to come over in droves. So we just have to be ready for that.
That's something that I was thinking, where, the Free County Project can almost propel national politics, right? Where you see this free county and we have this beacon of freedom, the only county in the United States of America being run by libertarians. And when people look at it and see that it's being run well, I would think whoever our presidential candidate should be, hey, let's take a look at this county in Georgia, or if there's 3 counties by the time, that can be a shining beacon where, you mentioned if someone's a couple of counties over and they're like, wow, I got the same size house on the same size acreage and I'm paying 6 times the property tax than my neighbors a few counties over. Maybe, you see that and it spreads, and then, using the local examples, maybe it's a combination, right? Where Free County happens in Georgia, STEAM happens with, Free State Project in New Hampshire, and now, hey, we've got a county example, a state example, and, maybe that's what it takes to get Republicans and Democrats to say, you know what, let's give these libertarians one shot, and if they mess it up, we'll go back to our uniparty status quo.
Just think about the visual, and I think we've done it on election night for the presidential election, when they show county by county across the nation the election results. Just think, winning even one county will put a blip on that map that people could not help but notice and wonder, well, what happened there? Or let's say we had 10 or 15 of those blips on the map. It's not just red or blue, but what's happening in these localities? That visual gets people thinking. It gets press. They try to ignore us with mainstream, press all the time. We have to be in a situation where they can't ignore us.
Yeah.
They have to put it up there. So those are the type of things that this can lead to. Yeah.
Man, that's exciting. Well, you've been so generous with your time. I always have my one final question. It's become a tradition on, a relatively new podcast, but I asked it once. I enjoyed the responses, so I've been asking everybody since. So thank you so much for talking to me about the Free County Project. Again, if there's anybody in North Carolina, we love our North Carolina libertarians, but, we're not organized yet. John and Georgia are. So if you want to go help make a free county there, take all your experience, come back here, and then help us make a free county here in North Carolina, I will not be offended. But shifting gears, I want to ask if we can transport from that, and I know libertarians are generally, against authoritarianism, against dictatorships.
No way.
But I would like you to put the imaginary dictator crown on. So, John Monds, you are dictator for a day, and with the stroke of the pen, you can accomplish one thing that, that essentially, call it a presidential executive order. To do one thing, only we're going to call this totalitarian. You get the one thing, stroke of a pen, and then you're no longer a dictator. What would it be and why?
I think that the first thing that comes to mind, I talked about this on the campaign, would be ending these wars around the world. Bring all the troops home. Stop this mass murder around the world. I think that alone would make an impact and an example for others to follow. So, bring the troops home. That would be number one. But in one day, you got 24 hours. So I'm gonna get more than that done.
You're gonna go in like Congress and cram like a 6,000 page bill as your one stroke of the pen. But no, ending the wars. I love the military. My brother was a Marine. He had combat time in Grenada, which I don't think we should have been there in the first place, but he was there. He thought he was serving his country, but I see the government failed him. Right? He came back. He was exposed to a bunch of things. He's now had to have a kidney replacement. The government failed him. The VA did not do things. There were tests that they ran when he was in boot camp that said, hey, these kidney levels are a little high. They didn't care. They shipped him off to war, right? And then they came back, and now, when he was in his 50s, he needed a kidney transplant, right? So I'm a little angry at the state, but I love soldiers. The people who are the individuals. 25 veterans kill themselves a day in this country. That's mind-numbing. 25 people who because of the crap our government put them through.
Absolutely.
Causes them to take their life. So, from a standpoint of stroke of a pen, you would be responsible for saving far more lives than anybody in history if you were to do that one thing. So, man.
The second thing would be to pardon, commute sentences for all nonviolent drug offenders. There's about 43,000, I believe, nonviolent drug offenders in federal prison.
Okay.
As president, with the stroke of a pen, like you say, we could release them from cages, free their lives, take them back to their families. Those are the type of things that libertarians want to do. Those are the type of things anybody should want to do. We know that the drug war, it's not a drug war. It's a war on people. It's a war on families. So if we can end that, one, on a local level by having sheriffs that saying that this is not my concern. On the federal level, having a president that's willing to let these people out and go back to their families. Policies and things like that is what will attract folks to the party.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You are a well-known national libertarian. Let me give you a third one. Let's go one more like a genie. So we're going to end the wars. We're going to end all commute and any nonviolent crime across the country at any level. You're all going home. What's one more thing for the third wish, Mr. Mott?
Well, I'm going to start axing federal agencies. When you look at the federal, school board superintendent or whatever, get rid of them. Get rid of the whole Department of Education, the whole thing. One, because we don't need it on the federal level. We don't need national schools. The states, you force it down to the state and local level.
Yeah.
So you look at agencies, all the alphabet soup ones, we're just going to start, striking them from day one, So Department of Transportation, all roads go through states, they go through local communities. Why do we need a federal Department of Transportation? So if a state wants to maintain, I-85, I-95, let the state do that. Let the people, decide if they want to do that, or would they rather see the other local roads get better care? We spend all this money in gas taxes and all this stuff, and a lot of these local rural communities still got dirt roads.
Yeah. Well, John, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts? I know we kind of covered a lot. Any closing thoughts for North Carolina libertarians who may be listening?
Well, from the work I saw that you guys are doing there, you're doing a fantastic job. Keep up the good work. I want to talk again on Facebook. Look for the Free County Project. Reach out. That's a private group. Join that. If you want to email us here in Georgia spelled out fcp@gmail.com is where you can reach out, share some ideas. Hopefully, some small group of folks there in North Carolina will decide this is something worthy of doing there, and they will be the contact person for North Carolina. Are you trying to say how long have we been on? I mean, it's been we just hit an hour, man.
Yeah, we just hit an hour. You know what? We can keep going. I try to be I ask for an hour commitment. We can go Joe Rogan and go for 3 if you want, Mr. Monds.
Well, I mean, you can always, if you want me back, I'll be glad to come back and do another show.
Anytime. I'm free. I tried to respect that, but we can go anywhere with the conversation, man. There's plenty of things that I think about there, with the future of libertarianism and things there. So we can keep going, man. I just wanted to be respectful of you, respectful of your time. So yeah.
So do you have any other questions that came to mind over the course of the hour that we've had?
Yeah, I mean, just a lot, right? What I have a ton, right? I could, where it goes there, where, we can get it almost into the weeds, which I think we would have to, right? And I know you've kind of done a lot there, but, you said starting, like when did you guys get the idea, right? Of when to start this Free County project? How big was that initial group? Like, did it start with just, you and 4 other people and then said, hey, we have this idea, let's nurture relationships. And then, how big does it have to, what does the growth look like? Those are the kind of things that I think about, like, how do we implement this in North Carolina?
One is spreading the word. Right now, I say we've got probably 15 to 20 people that are committed. They like the ideal and have been spreading the word. And from there, like anything, you reach out and talk to somebody. I talk to somebody. This is one of the topics that I bring up at all the conventions that I go to. Anytime I get to speak on what I think that the future is for the party, for freedom, this is an ideal I get to share. So, and then, I have to do some follow up, like I say, to see how things are going in other states and make sure people know that we are open here in Georgia. And if you're out in North Dakota and you don't think it might be going over well there, you can come to Georgia. But it's about making the opportunities for folks If they want to go to New Hampshire, North Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Michigan, Ohio, if they're just they want to be free, take the ideal, run with it. Like I say, I'm not the purveyor. I'm not the lead, or I'm one of the leads on the project, but this is organic. This is voluntary system in which this is something you want. You can put in as much time, as much money, or whatever that you want to do for it.
What do you got? What do you, when I think there, where I think, you guys obviously have a head start. Obviously, if something happens like this in North Carolina and something gets going, I'm running the podcast. I'd like to get involved in some capacity here. But when we think through it, when I think through, you're going to need a lot, right? You need outreach. You need, all sorts of different talents, right? Whether it's a graphic designer or someone to do a commercial. What do you guys need, right? You guys started it with the Free County Project. If we can reach someone who might have a talent or a skill or something that would be helpful, whether it's a candidate, right? Someone who's got a law enforcement background to run for that sheriff office. What do you guys need right now? What can we best do to help?
What we need is simple. People committed to being free.
Okay.
That's the way I look at it. If you're committed to being free, I don't care what your background is. I don't care where you're from. We'd like to have you be a part of the project. Let me, I mentioned this, I think, in Georgia, Alabama, for example. Let's say in one of these communities, you have, 500 libertarians, in a community. What would be the synergy there? A lot of us that have been active in the party, we're running local affiliates on the county level or regional level. And a lot of times you're not only the candidate, you're the head of the affiliate, you're on the state XCOM, and you have all these hats that you're trying to fill. But when we talk about, building synergy in a county, you don't have to get burnt out trying to do everything. What would a 500 person local affiliate, how dynamic would that be? As far as people being able to spread out, running campaigns, door to door, being able to, collect campaign funds and get donations. And that would be a powerful force. It would be a powerful force in a lot of these communities for any party,
sure.
But what I found, for example, once again, I like to talk about locally, the Democrats and Republicans, a lot of times, aren't as strong as people think they are. People just vote for them out of habit. A lot of times, that's all they know. But as far as organization, a lot of times we have them beat. They're struggling to find candidates, because people don't want to run for office. They don't like the system. So we may look at ourselves and say, hey, man, we're struggling, trying to do all these things to be an active party, but they're struggling as well. They just have an advantage of having history and a lot of people already in office. But once you start taking that away, and you see it all the time in Georgia for about 140 years, this was a Democratic solid state. But when things started shifting, all those longtime Democrats, now they're 20 years, longtime Republicans. We'll have the same thing. Once we get a headwind, once we reach a tipping point, when people see that we're viable, that we're getting elected, people will gladly say, I'm leaving the Democrats and Republicans behind. I want to be with them. Because what we're talking about, our message, our platform is bar none the best, in this entire country. Period.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I long for the day for so many reasons, right? My son's 9 and he's $90,000 in debt between the federal government and the state of North Carolina.
You're a numbers guy, right?
Yeah. It's around 86 from the federal government and about 4 from North Carolina. And we're one of the better states when it comes to debt, supposedly, but still $4,000 is, you're born into North Carolina debt here. I look at what you're doing, and I'm so inspired by that and trying to set it free in our lifetime. You've been doing this in the Libertarian Party for a while. What can, and we think about things like convention, right? You know, where we get there and we're kind of almost in an echo chamber, right? We're with other libertarians who kind of think that way. One thing that I always try to do with everybody is kind of come out. How do you, what have you found the best success with in kind of reaching out locally, right? Where maybe we can't, maybe we don't organize a free county project, right? But say someone out there is a libertarian and they want to reach out to their community. Like I look at my community. I'm in a small town. So I looked into it when the Libertarian Party said we're looking for candidates. The mayor of my town won with less than 200 votes.
Wow.
Okay, less than 200 votes. There's 170 houses in my neighborhood. I could knock on my doors and talk to my neighbors, and it almost wouldn't matter what party. I look at it and say there's 3,500 people in my town. If I knocked on every door in my town and spoke to everybody, 200 votes out of 3,500 people it's not a huge amount, right? That you need to get out there. What do you find kind of has been the most successful? Because I know North Carolina, like anywhere else, you kind of have red areas, blue areas. Hopefully in the future we have some gold areas that we don't have to worry about. But what are some things that you've used over the years? Because I think that's one of the things that national, but even down to local, is really important. And it's a big national topic right now, messaging, right? It's a big conversation piece for libertarians right now.
Very important.
But for me, and yeah, I think all of that matters with the social media and whatnot, but I think the best messaging comes from that interaction you have with your neighbor, right? You're out there, at the soccer field watching, your kids play a game, or I'm in a neighborhood, right? So at the community pool, something like that. What have you found to be kind of the best ways to outreach, to people who may not even know what libertarians are?
Well, definitely one way is something as simple as a letter to the editor. Most areas are still have local publications, the local news, and these publications are always looking for feedback. And I've done that several times. I need to do more of it. Is when a local issue comes up, that these statists are being statist like they normally do. Just write a small letter to the editor to give a libertarian point of view, because there's actually still people, especially in rural areas, that read newspapers. So you might not talk to them one-on-one, but you can spread it out to a wider audience through a letter to the editor. Like you mentioned, just having a conversation, talking to a parent, you run into at the ball field, what do you think about, education here? Could it be better? Are we spending too much money? Could it be better spent? Are we doing things, is the government doing things that they shouldn't be doing? And just opening up a conversation. But another thing is everybody can find their niche, whatever your niche is. For me, it just happens to be a candidate. I've had success as a candidate, but somebody out there can be a campaign manager. Maybe they want to be on the executive board of the state office. Maybe they want to be in national politics. They want to be on the LNC. Maybe they want to help raise funds. Maybe they want to lobby at the state house. Whatever a person's strengths are, they should go towards that. And whatever time commitment they want to put in. This is about individuals. We're all about individuals respecting each other's rights. So, that's a recommendation I would have for anybody. Just find what you're good at and just be the best at that and go do that.
Yeah. It's funny. I had one of my earlier podcast guests, I think on episode 3 of the podcast, is a pretty new, smaller county affiliate here in North Carolina. And he it's a small town, but essentially the Republicans of the town were doing something that was just insanely corrupt and shady. And he saw it, by, going to these Zoom meetings, right? Counties have all kind of gone to this Zoom meeting where the public can attend. And the reality is, in small towns, not very many people attend. But the situation, just to boil it down super, super short, is essentially the local government was going to impose a new fee on food trucks, where it was $100 a year, and they were going to put it to $150 a day. Now get this, in the town, there are 2 food trucks. One of them is Chick-fil-A, and because their food is pre-prepared, doesn't apply. So this piece of legislation literally impacted one person. And to make it even worse, the county commissioners or the town board who was doing this actually owned the real estate that the town's restaurants were in. So the restaurants were essentially complaining about this food truck, because
their business,
right? They're killing their business, because it pulls up across the street from our restaurant, and they don't have the overhead and the employees and all this stuff. But he's a chair of this county affiliate, and he saw this, and he did just what you said. He took it to the local news, and because he took it to the local news, when they looked at this, even though it's a red town, right? It's a red town, and it was a red person. When you look at what happened, the town was mad, and they've now gone back, and they were trying to push it through in a backroom deal. But because of that publicity and the media jumping into it, now he jokes. He says every time he goes to the food truck owner won't let him pay. He tries to pay the guy. He won't take it because $150 a day for a food truck. I mean, you may as well just say we're just going to revoke your business license. That could be the guy's whole margin. The whole day, that was what he makes. That's his margin, and now it's just a fee.
We have to realize that there are ways for us to win, to have impact without necessarily winning elections. I mean, like you say, just proper messaging, turning people's minds around. And I like to give an example. I didn't win the governor's race, but during one of the debates, I was debating against the other 2 candidates. The Republican candidate eventually won, but there was a law in Georgia, the blue law. We still had blue laws in which you couldn't buy alcohol on Sunday. So it was a very popular issue with people that wanted to get rid of this. The Republican Party, the General Assembly wanted to get rid of it. But the Republican outgoing governor said he would never sign the bill. So I took it up as a campaign issue. And during a live debate, when you get to ask a candidate a question, I asked the eventual winner, I said, if your party passes this bill for Sunday sales, would you sign it? And he tried to equivocate, tried to get out of it. I have to look at it and read it. And I kept hammering him. I said, see, he's trying to avoid the question. He's not answering. He's playing politician. And until I hammered him until he finally committed. If they pass the bill, I will sign it. And that's exactly what happened.
And he did. He held through. He actually held up.
He had to.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, he said that in front of, he made this very public statement in front of a large crowd down in Warner Robins, and that's exactly what happened. So I didn't win the election, but on that issue, me forcing him got it done. So now it's a referendum procedure here in Georgia. Every county gets to decide whether they want to have Sunday sales. So, but they did that because the LP had a candidate that was willing to force an issue and get them to commit to doing something that the people wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad he did. Obviously, I just I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't, looking at politics nowadays, because it seems like they all break their promises nowadays. That's funny. The town I live in was actually a dry county, which was so silly. Like the little town I live in. The town couldn't sell beer, and it's so silly. We got 3,500 people. It's like a half a mile down the road is the next town, and their gas stations all have beer. It's like, what are you accomplishing other than harming anybody who may want to start a tax-paying business in the town?
Right.
They've since gotten rid of that, thankfully. But that's yeah. I mean that's a real impact, and I think we want to win elections, right? Winning elections is how we get those big changes all at once. But that's something too that, you know, we may not get that right away, but you know, that example, right? You get on the debate stage, you call them out on something that's a principled libertarian position, you get them to commit, and then, you know, if he or she doesn't follow through, you know, it's at the wrath of the voters, and
Right.
you know, it's harmful. And then, you know, I think of what Jonathan did with his county affiliate now. Like, you know, they didn't get that sign. You know, it's still going, and now they're debating, you know, well, can we do $25 a day? You know, honestly, you know, it'd be best you just leave the guy alone. It's one person, right?
Right.
Just leave the man alone. But you know, that's a win.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And these small wins eventually will add up to big wins. You know, being principled, messaging is the key. And if we keep doing these type of things, our time is coming. You know, our time is coming. It's nearer than we think. And we just have to keep working, pushing, and doing what we know we need to do.
Well, that's man, that's exciting. Anything else go? I mean, I'm excited. I hope something gets going. I'm going to talk to my wife about it. I think she'll tell me no, because she told me no to New Hampshire. But you know, again, it's the long game, right? And you know, our life circumstances could change too, right? You know, where our parents are getting older. If our parents weren't here, you know, we'd be a lot more mobile there, right? It's our family that keeps us here. So as you know,
we'll get you a tiny house here. How many kids you have?
just one. Yeah, we were one and done.
Your second home can be right here in Georgia.
You know, you said something. It's funny. I am looking for acreage. So you said that you've got everything from kind of down. You know, if there's 20 acres out there reasonably priced, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to doing that, because that's, you know, I was planning on doing that in North Carolina. I could always try and change it, but you know, that I grew up in kind of, you know, I grew up in the city. I fell in love with the country, right? So you know, that's a small farm to me. You know, a small farm close enough to the big city. I like nice restaurants and you know, all of the things that come there. But yeah, I'm just excited to see this. I'm excited to follow it and watch it grow. And you know, that I didn't even think of that, you know, and anybody at LPNC, I'm sorry for this one. You know, I know that I'm supposed to request donations to LPNC. So if you want to, you know, donate to LPNC, is this something where, you know, because I look at it at the idea, right? Is this something that we can help fund, right? Maybe someone can't come to Georgia, but sees the value of a libertarian county, right? We see, I know you need people there, but is it set up if someone wanted to contribute to make that a reality? Is there somewhere that we can do that?
Not at this time, but like, you can live anywhere and invest.
Right.
You can, like I said, you can buy property here, or you know, would you like to partner with somebody on building a duplex, you know, as an investment?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know, I might not live there, but I think this ideal could make that county and go from one of a poor rural county to one of you know, the most affluent counties in the state. And I want to get in early. I want to be the early adopter. You know, you have places, a lot of your big.
So John's not asking for donation, but giving everybody an opportunity. Because I mean, think about that. You know, I'm thinking about that. I'm a financial planner and investment advisor, and you know, the idea of running a business in a libertarian society. Yeah, I mean, that's something that could ultimately contribute to it too, right? You know, you get people there. There needs to be businesses. People still want to have normal life. It's one thing to have the government you want, but if it doesn't have any of the amenities of what you want in your life, then
you need plumbers, you need mechanics. You need teachers, just like any community. This just would be those same occupations, but people that believe in freedom. You need business owners. Um, you know, people want to be entertained. You need entertainment, entertainment, all kinds of things. So once again, this is something that anybody could fit into, depending on what they want. And like I say, you can be an investor, build a house, have a rental property, so that when people get ready to start moving, they need places to stay. A lot of communities, that these rural communities don't have a lot of housing stock. It might not be a lot of transition, so it might be something where you can do a small development where you put 3 or 4 duplexes on there and invite folks that believe in the Free County Project. Say, hey, they might not be able to afford buying a house, but they'd be glad to rent one, to be a part of the project. So all those type of things, the nitty gritty are things that, we have to work out, but we'll work them out as we go. It's no need to wait. Let's get going, right now, keep moving forward. Like I say, I was talking to Spike. I said, Spike, man, you need to have a Free County Project in South Carolina. So there should be some place to go in this country for anybody that really wants to be free and have a good shot, opportunity at getting it once again in their lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way to go. I'm excited. I can't wait to follow this. And, I think once it's, I think the problem that you're going to have is that once you get it done, there's going to be a whole lot of growth. So just make sure there's enough land, because I can see once you get it booming, I think a lot of libertarians from around the country, when they see, oh my gosh, there's a place that's actually being run according to this ideology that, that I believe in, right? That's exciting, and I wish you and the people of Georgia the best of luck, because that is something that you're really fighting for the freedom of everybody. Because I really think that can be a domino effect, right? You see that there, and 5 years down the road, neighboring counties are either going to be moving there or asking you to annex them or things like that. And I think
right.
Once that example exists, everyone's. I want to see a free county in every state, right? And then just let that free county expand outward.
I mean, freedom is contagious. Let's spread it around.
Yeah.
I mean, and just as a side note, other people have thought about this. Other groups. I mean, I found one. I was listening to Free Talk Live this past week, and they were talking about free private cities.com. So I went and looked at it, and it's very similar. Okay. We want to change communities, into these freedom zones. So, if somebody wanted to look at that, maybe they want to be a part of that. Maybe the Free County Project doesn't quite appeal to them, or, maybe it's somebody that's not a libertarian or whatever. And they say, well, let me look at this freeprivatecities.com. Maybe I can be a part of that. And there's another one called the One Small Town. It's what's the gentleman's name? Michael Tellinger, I think, came up with this system. I think he's out of South Africa, but he's talking about changing, one town at a time. And, I looked at his program, but I think personally, two of the flaws that I saw in those programs is that they're part of it is going to government and asking their permission. I think the freeprivatecities.com, that guy's name is Titus Gebel, Gebel. And he was talking about, going to a sovereign country and asking for land, asking for and creating like a free economic zone, but you'd have a organization that would kind of contract all the services, So to me, that's a flaw, having to ask for permission to get that land. The other gentleman, Tellinger, part of his program was coming together as a community and volunteering hours, getting a commitment of 3 hours a week. And if you have a community of 5,000 of these volunteers, that would be 15,000 hours that you can offer to companies as free labor. You cut down the cost on one of the largest costs to their businesses. And he was talking about you split the profits 3 ways. One with the volunteers, the company keeps a third, and the municipality keeps a third. But he's looking to go to mayors and county city councils and things like that, to try to get them on board. So that could possibly be a flaw. And the other thing with that, unlike ours, in which we would be in the elected office, that you could create this great community, have all these volunteers, but at the whim of government, they could change it at any time. Like you were talking about the city council creating this law to affect one person, and they can do that. So that's the risk you take when you leave everything up to government, to maybe leave you alone. I think the difference in what we're trying to do is be in government to get rid of government instead of asking them to do this stuff. But this idea out there, these guys, I think both international, I forget where the other guy's from, but it's some European country. And they're taking these ideas and saying, we know the system is broken. So people are organically trying to think of ways that we could have a freer society. So the time has come. People are ready for it. So my thing is let's do it.
Yeah, no, that would be my fear. There is, you ask the government for permission. Governments change their mind all the time. So now you think all of this effort, energy, people, money that goes into it, and government can take that away. I just wouldn't trust government, and that's what makes yours, the Free County Project so beautiful, is that you're actually taking government itself, right? Like you're getting principled people there that are accountable. That tons of flaws with a lot of things in our political system, but that concept of at that local level, we can put a sheriff in charge. We can put our mayor in charge. And if they do something that is so egregious to that locality, it doesn't matter what is going on 5 counties over. It doesn't matter what's happening in the next state. It doesn't matter what's happening at the national level. If at that, at whatever local level it is, whether it's county or state, the voters do have a say if you do something so egregious, where in that situation, you do it where you can negotiate with a foreign government to have this. I don't think you could vote them out if they decided to renege on the promises.
Yeah, and we've seen that. So, let's say, maybe libertarians get elected and all of a sudden, they change their stripes or something like that. We can't predict the future, but the ideal and the premise, we have to ask ourselves, is it worth doing? Is it worth trying? And the answer for myself is absolutely. We've tried so many other things. We've seen the failure. Why not try this?
Well, and if we don't try, what do we get? We
Right.
know what we get. We get the status quo, right? So,
all right, Mike. Well, we've done an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It flew by. It's hard to believe, but hey, man, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you asking me on, and hopefully, once again, if somebody hears this, sees this, they're interested. They can contact you. I mean, you have my contact information. They can do Facebook with the Free County Project private group, or they just want to reach out to Georgia spelled out fcp@gmail.com. It's just a way to reach out to other people that believe in this ideal and want to spread it around.
Yeah, and if anybody's watching it on YouTube, I will make sure to put the link to that in the description as well, so you can get right there. John, thank you so much for being generous with your time this evening. and thank you for a great conversation. You are always welcome anytime. If you're running for things in the future, we'd be happy to have you on to kind of talk about that. And I know if we're in another state, we can't vote for you, but I know that if there's a campaign, we can donate to you across from there. So I'd love to have you on there, and definitely as the Free County Project moves along. I'd platform you every week so that we could get one going and say, look, it's been done. Come on, North Carolina. So thank you so much. And thank you to all the listeners, wherever you may be. Like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. And we will see you next weekend, Sunday at 6 p.m. Thanks so much.